The hand that signed the lease on our first apartment was the same hand that signed the affidavit, claiming I'd never contributed $1 to our life together. 19 years we built that accounting firm from a card table in our bedroom, and Warren Keller stood in a courtroom and swore under oath that I was nothing but a dependent housewife who spent his money. My name is Natalie Drummond. I'm 41 years old. The woman I was at 22, the one who believed love and loyalty were the same thing, died 4 years ago on a Tuesday night when I opened his laptop looking for tax documents and found 2 years of hotel receipts and messages that turned my stomach inside out. We met in college. University of Arizona, sophomore year. I was studying education. Warren was in business. We got married young, 22 and 23, moved to Tucson with $800 between us and a beat-up Honda with a cracked windshield. Those first years were hard in ways people who've never been broke can't understand. We ate ramen 4 nights a week, split a pack of chicken breasts across 6 meals. I worked as a substitute teacher while Warren tried to build his practice. Clients were slow, money was slower. Before we continue, remember that this is still a small channel and I could really use your support. Please like the video and subscribe. It's free and it helps more than you know. When Warren finally landed his first corporate client, a mid-sized construction company that needed quarterly filings, I quit teaching and came on full-time. No salary, no title, just work. I answered phones, filed documents, learned QuickBooks from YouTube videos at midnight, drove across Pima County delivering tax packets to clients who couldn't come to the office. I scheduled appointments, chased down late payments, organized files, cleaned the office, made coffee, brought lunch. Warren focused on the accounting. I handled everything else. 2 years in, we hired our first employee. 4 years in, we moved into an actual office building on Campbell Avenue. 6 years in, we had 8 employees and 73 clients. Our kids were born during that stretch. Ethan first, then Sophie 2 years later. I cut back to part-time teaching again because someone had to be home with the kids and Warren's schedule was packed. I still handled the firm's books at night after the kids went to bed. Still drove documents across town when needed. Still showed up. The firm kept growing. By year 10, we had a second office in Phoenix. By year 15, 22 employees and revenue pushing $2 million a year. We bought a house in the Catalina foothills. Good schools for the kids. Warren joined a golf club. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable, stable, building something that mattered. Somewhere around year 15, Warren changed. Came home later, stopped asking about my day, spent more time on his phone than with the kids. When I asked if something was wrong, he said he was stressed about work, about expansion, about hiring, about competition. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? This was my husband, my partner, the man I'd built a life with. The distance grew. Dinner became something I ate alone with the kids while Warren worked late. Weekends became something he spent at the office or the golf course. Our bedroom became 2 people sleeping on opposite sides of a mattress, not touching, not talking, just existing in the same space. I started noticing things. New cologne, gym memberships he never used, receipts from restaurants we'd never been to together. I tried talking, tried dressing better, tried being more present, more interesting, more everything. Nothing changed. I watched my reflection in the mirror and saw someone tired. Someone aging, someone invisible. The doubts crept in slow. Maybe I'd let myself go. Maybe I wasn't enough anymore. Maybe 19 years of marriage had just worn us down to nothing. Then came that Tuesday. I needed last quarter's expense reports for our accountant. Warren was in Phoenix for the week. I opened his laptop, found the folder, saw another folder labeled Travel Backup. Clicked it without thinking. Hotel confirmations, dozens of them, Scottsdale, Tempe, Sedona, 2 years' worth. I opened his messages, found her name, Brooke Sinclair. She worked at the firm. Warren had hired her 18 months earlier as a senior accountant, 28 years old. I'd met her twice at company events. She was polite, professional, nothing that raised a flag. The messages weren't polite, They were explicit, detailed, brutal. Photos, videos, conversations about how I was boring, how I'd gotten old, how he stayed for the kids and the business, but wished he'd left years ago. Plans to wait until Sophie turned 18, then file for divorce and start over clean. I read everything, every word, every lie he'd told me while kissing her. Every night he'd claimed to be working late while he was in a hotel room 30 miles away. Every morning he'd come home and hugged the kids like nothing had happened. My hands shook so hard I could barely scroll. My chest felt like someone had poured concrete into my lungs. When Warren came home Friday night, I was sitting at the kitchen table with printed copies of the messages spread out in front of me. He froze in the doorway, went pale. His briefcase slipped from his hand and hit the tile floor. "Natalie, How long?" He stammered something about it being complicated, about not meaning for it to happen, about stress at work making him vulnerable. I cut him off. "How long?" His eyes darted to the papers, to the bedroom door where the kids were supposedly asleep. Back to me. 2 years. "But it's not what you—" 2 years. I said it flat, tested the weight of it. 2 years of lying to my face every single morning. 2 years of sleeping next to me while planning his exit. 2 years of me standing in front of the mirror wondering what I'd done wrong while he was building a second life 30 miles away. He moved toward the table. I stood up. He stopped. "Don't," I said. He tried anyway. Said I'd changed after the kids were born. Said the spark was gone and he didn't know how to talk to me about it. Said he felt invisible in his own house. Like I only saw him as a paycheck and a co-parent. Said he needed to feel alive again. Needed to feel wanted. Needed something that wasn't about kids' schedules and mortgage payments. Then he said it. "Brooke makes me feel young." I looked at the man I'd spent 19 years building a life with and saw a stranger. A middle-aged man who'd decided his midlife crisis was more important than his family. Who'd convinced himself his affair was somehow my fault because I'd gained 15 pounds and stopped pretending his bad jokes were funny. "You're 42 years old," I said. "You're not young, and sleeping with a 28-year-old employee doesn't make you young. It makes you a cliché." His face flushed. "That's not fair." "Fair? You want to talk about fair?" I picked up one of the printed messages, read it out loud. The one where he'd told her I was frigid and boring. The one where he'd said staying married to me was like living with a roommate he didn't particularly like. "Is that fair, Warren?" He flinched, looked away. "I was venting. I didn't mean—" "You meant every word. And you know what the worst part is?" I set the paper down carefully. "You didn't even have the decency to leave. You were going to keep me around until Sophie turned 18. Keep lying, keep using me to maintain your respectable family man image while you screwed your employee on company time with company money." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like? Explain it to me. Make me understand how 2 years of hotel rooms and lies and planning your exit while I blame myself for your distance was somehow not exactly like that." He couldn't. He stood there with his mouth open, and nothing came out except more excuses. He was stressed. The firm was demanding. I didn't understand the pressure he was under. Brooke had been there during a vulnerable time. It just happened. "Nothing just happens," I said. "You chose this. Every single day for 2 years, you woke up and chose this." That's when he started begging. Tears in his eyes, voice shaking. Said he'd end it with Brooke immediately. Said we could fix this. We'd built too much together to throw it away. Said he'd do therapy, marriage counseling, whatever I wanted. He'd be transparent, give me his passwords, check in constantly. He'd prove he could change. "Please don't tell the kids," he whispered. "They don't need to know. We can handle this privately, for their sake." I looked at him, really looked. Saw the fear in his face and realized it wasn't fear of losing me. It was fear of losing his comfortable life, his nice house, his reputation, his image as the successful family man who built a firm from nothing. I didn't answer, didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't throw anything. I picked up the papers, stacked them neatly, and walked past him to the stairs. He called my name twice. I didn't turn around. I went into our bedroom, locked the door, and lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling until morning. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I heard him crying downstairs. I felt nothing. The woman who would have gone to comfort him, who would have believed his promises and fought to save the marriage, was already gone. And the person lying in that bed, staring at the dark, was someone new, someone cold, someone who understood exactly what needed to happen next. The next weeks were a fog of pain so deep I couldn't think straight. I functioned on autopilot, made breakfast, drove the kids to school, taught my classes, came home, cooked dinner, helped with homework, smiled when I needed to smile, died inside the rest of the time. Warren moved into the guest room, kept saying he'd ended things with Brooke, kept pushing for counseling, kept acting like this was something we could repair. I went through the motions, made appointments with a marriage therapist, sat through sessions where Warren cried and promised to change, came home and felt nothing. 4 months later, Sophie forgot her phone at home and asked me to check her messages during school. When I opened it, there was a text thread from Brooke to Warren, forwarded by a friend of Sophie's whose mother worked at the firm. The affair had never stopped. He'd just gotten more careful. That's when the old Natalie died and someone else took her place. Someone cold. Someone who understood that love is a weapon when you give it to the wrong person, and the only way to survive is to stop fighting fair. I called a lawyer that afternoon. Not just any lawyer, Helen Ortega, the best family law attorney in Tucson, the one who'd handled 3 high-profile divorces in the past year and walked away with her clients getting everything. I showed her the evidence. 2 years of messages, hotel receipts, credit card statements showing gifts, dinners, trips. She smiled. Arizona is a community property state. Everything acquired during the marriage gets split 50-50, unless we can prove fraud or dissipation of assets. And honey, he just handed us dissipation on a silver platter. We built the case quietly. I hired a forensic accountant who went through every business record for the past 3 years. Found over $80,000 Warren had funneled from the firm's accounts into personal spending, most of it on Brooke. Apartment deposits, furniture, jewelry, trips, all paid with business funds that were half mine under Arizona law. I documented everything, kept smiling at home, kept pretending I believed his lies about ending the affair. Let him think I was broken, compliant, weak. Inside, I was building a case that would bury him. 3 months later, on a Monday morning, Warren got served with divorce papers at the office in front of his entire staff. Simultaneously, a lawsuit for dissipation of marital assets, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. He called me screaming. I didn't answer. He showed up at the house. I'd changed the locks. He stood on the lawn yelling until a patrol car showed up because I'd called them first. The legal process was vicious. Warren hired Mitchell Carver, an attorney known for aggressive tactics and creative interpretations of marital contributions. Their strategy became clear in the first filing. Paint me as a stay-at-home mother who'd contributed nothing to the firm's success, who'd lived off Warren's hard work and intelligence, who was now trying to take half of what he'd built alone. The affidavit Warren signed made my hands shake when I read it. Stated I'd quit my teaching job by choice to stay home with the children. Stated I'd occasionally helped with minor administrative tasks as a favor. Stated the firm's growth was entirely due to his business acumen and client relationships. Stated I'd spent 19 years as a dependent housewife, spending his income on personal expenses. Every word was a knife. Not just because it was a lie, but because this was the man I'd stood beside in that tiny apartment eating ramen, the man I'd worked 70-hour weeks for without a paycheck, the man who'd told our friends at parties that he couldn't have built the firm without me. Now he was standing in front of a judge claiming I'd contributed nothing. Helen Ortega didn't just demolish his story, she buried it so deep it would never see daylight again. She started with employment records. W-2 forms showing I'd been on the firm's payroll for 12 years, from year 2 through year 14, before transitioning to part-time teaching. Payroll records showing hours, responsibilities, job descriptions, tax returns listing me as a co-officer of the corporation. Then came the emails. 217 of them. Me coordinating with clients, me managing schedules, me solving problems Warren never even knew existed, me handling disputes with vendors, employees, contractors. Helen printed every one and bound them in a binder 4 inches thick. Then came the bank records, joint accounts since year 1. Joint mortgage applications listing both our incomes, joint business loans with both our signatures, business formation documents listing both of us as founding members, articles of incorporation with my name right next to his. Then came the forensic accountant's report. Gregory Chen had spent 3 months dissecting the firm's finances. What he found made even Helen pause. $83,460. That's what Warren had funneled from business accounts into personal spending over 3 years. Not overhead, not legitimate business expenses, personal spending. The forensic trail was pristine. Apartment deposit for Brooke, $7,000, paid from the firm's operating account, categorized as office renovation. Furniture for that apartment, $11,000, categorized as equipment purchases. Weekend trips to Sedona, Scottsdale, Phoenix, $32,000 across 18 months, all charged to the corporate card, all categorized as client development. Jewelry, $14,000, categorized as employee appreciation gifts. The rest was dinners, hotels, a used BMW for Brooke, categorized as a company vehicle she never used for company business. Every transaction had a paper trail. Every lie had a receipt. Gregory had built a timeline showing exactly when Warren's spending spiked, exactly when his affair started, exactly how much of our marital assets he'd burned through on his mistress. The hearing lasted 6 hours. Warren's attorney tried to claim the spending was legitimate business development. Helen asked him to name a single client acquired through the Sedona trips. He couldn't. She asked him to explain why employee appreciation gifts went only to Brooke Sinclair. He stammered something about performance bonuses. Helen produced performance reviews showing Brooke's work was adequate at best, certainly not $14,000 in jewelry adequate. Judge Raymond Martinez wasn't a man who tolerated games. He'd been on the bench for 16 years and had a reputation for cutting through manipulation. When Warren's attorney tried to argue I'd been compensated through our lifestyle, through the house and cars and vacations, Judge Martinez stopped him. Counsel, Arizona is a community property state. Mrs. Drummond wasn't compensated through marital assets. She owned half of those assets by law. Your client's attempt to rewrite history and claim sole ownership of a business built during the marriage is not only factually incorrect, it's insulting to this court's intelligence. Warren's face went white. The judge continued. The evidence shows Mrs. Drummond worked for the firm without salary for years during its critical growth period. The evidence shows she maintained joint ownership and joint responsibility. The evidence also shows Mr. Keller diverted over $80,000 in marital assets to fund an extramarital affair while lying to his wife about the state of their marriage. That's not business spending, that's dissipation of marital assets, and in this court, it has consequences. The ruling was swift. The firm got valued at $2.3 million. I got half. The house, worth $600,000 with $200,000 remaining on the mortgage, got valued at $400,000 equity. I got half. Retirement accounts totaling $470,000 got split 50-50. And Warren was ordered to repay the $83,460 he'd stolen with 8% annual interest compounded, directly to me, not to the business. Total, $1.2 million, plus the ongoing interest payments. Warren stood there like someone had ripped the ground out from under him. His attorney whispered something about appealing. Judge Martinez heard it. You can appeal, Mr. Carver, but I'll tell you right now, the evidence in this case is overwhelming and the law is clear. You'll spend your client's remaining money on legal fees and end up with the same result. I'd advise him to accept the judgment, pay what he owes, and learn from his mistakes. We walked out of that courtroom into the bright Tucson afternoon. Helen squeezed my shoulder. He tried to erase you. We made damn sure the court saw you clearly. I nodded. Couldn't speak yet. The vindication was so complete it felt unreal. Brooke left him before the ink dried on the judgment. Turns out she wasn't interested in a man who'd just lost half his net worth and his reputation. Word got around town fast. Clients started leaving. Employees quit. Warren had to close the Phoenix office. The Tucson office limped along with half the staff and a quarter of the revenue. Our kids, 16 and 14 by then, weren't stupid. They'd heard the fights through bedroom walls. They'd watched their father move into the guest room, then out of the house entirely. They'd seen me lose weight from stress, seen me cry when I thought they were asleep, seen the printouts on the kitchen table that morning before Warren moved out. But the real moment came when Warren's attorney filed a motion to subpoena Sophie's phone. They wanted the text thread where Brooke's messages had been forwarded, wanted to claim I'd manipulated the evidence, wanted to challenge the timeline. Sophie came home from school that day shaking. "Mom, why does Dad's lawyer want my phone?" I sat her down at the kitchen table. Ethan heard us talking and came downstairs. Both of them looked at me with those faces that were trying to be adult, trying to be strong, but were still just kids who wanted their world to make sense. I could have lied, could have softened it, could have protected Warren the way I'd been protecting him for months, hiding the worst of it, trying to let them keep some version of their father that wasn't completely destroyed. Instead, I told them the truth, calmly. No dramatics, no crying, just facts. Your father had an affair with a woman from his firm for 2 years. Her name is Brooke Sinclair. He lied to all of us during that time. When I found out, he promised to end it. He didn't. He kept seeing her and kept lying. During the affair, he spent over $80,000 of our family's money on her. Money that was supposed to be for our future, for your college funds, for our security. His attorney wants your phone because that's how I found out he was still lying. They think if they can challenge that evidence, they can protect him from the consequences. These are the facts. I'm not asking you to hate your father. I'm asking you to understand what happened so you can make your own decisions about your relationship with him. Sophie cried. Ethan sat there, stone-faced, jaw clenched, hands in fists on the table. Neither of them said anything for a long time. Finally, Ethan spoke. He told me you were the one who changed, that you got distant and cold, and he didn't know how to reach you anymore. I know. He told me the same thing. That's what people do when they don't want to take responsibility. They rewrite history, so they're the victim. He's a liar, Ethan said, flat, final. Everything he said was a lie. Sophie looked up, tears on her face. Does Brooke know about us? Did he tell her he has kids? Yes. And she didn't care? She's 28 years old and thought your father was rich and successful. She cared about what he could give her. When that disappeared, so did she. Sophie wiped her face. Good. Ethan stopped speaking to Warren entirely after that, blocked his number, refused visitation. When Warren showed up at the house trying to talk to him, Ethan walked past him like he was invisible. Warren tried grabbing his arm. Ethan jerked away and said one sentence, "You don't get to touch me anymore." Then he went inside and locked the door. Sophie was softer, but not by much. She agreed to minimal visitation because the custody agreement required it, every other weekend. But the daughter who used to run to the door when Warren came home, who used to beg him to play games and watch movies, was gone. In her place was someone polite and distant, someone who said yes, sir, and no, sir, and spent the weekends at his apartment reading in her room or asking to come home early. Warren tried everything. Bought Ethan the gaming computer he'd wanted for 2 years. Ethan sold it and donated the money to a women's shelter. Took Sophie shopping and told her to pick anything she wanted. She chose a book that cost $12. and refused anything else. He cried in front of them, said he'd made a terrible mistake, said he loved them more than anything, said he'd spend the rest of his life making it up to them if they'd just give him a chance. Ethan looked at him and said, "You had 19 years of chances. You spent 2 of them lying and stealing. Math doesn't work in your favor, Dad." Sophie was quieter, but just as final. After one of Warren's tearful apologies, she said, "I believe you're sorry. I just don't think sorry fixes what you broke." Warren tried to blame me, told them I was poisoning them against him, that I was manipulating them with one-sided information, that if they heard his side, they'd understand. Ethan laughed, actually laughed. "Your side? I read the messages, Dad. I saw the receipts. I watched Mom go through hell while you pretended to care. I don't need her to tell me anything. Your own words already told me everything." That was the last conversation Warren and Ethan had. Sophie maintained the bare minimum required by the custody agreement until she turned 16 and the court allowed her to refuse visitation. She stopped going. Warren called, texted, showed up at the house. She didn't answer, didn't engage, just moved forward without him. Trust, once shattered like that, doesn't rebuild just because someone says sorry. It doesn't rebuild because someone cries or buys gifts or promises change. It rebuilds through years of consistent, honest action. And Warren never understood that. He thought the relationship with his kids was something he could fix the way he'd tried to fix the marriage, with words and tears and empty promises. He never understood that they'd already seen who he really was. And words don't erase that. Actions do, and his actions had already spoken. 3 years later, I'm teaching full-time again at a charter school in Marana. I'm doing the work I actually love instead of propping up someone else's dream. I bought a smaller house near the Tortolita Mountains with my settlement money. Took the kids to Ireland last summer, something we'd always talked about but never did because Warren was too busy. Started therapy, started hiking, started remembering who I was before I spent 20 years making myself smaller to fit someone else's life. Warren lives in a rental condo near the university. The firm barely survives. He aged 10 years in 3. Lost most of his friends when they figured out what he'd done. Tried dating, but women in their 40s don't trust a man with his track record, and women in their 20s aren't interested once they realize he's broke. He reached out last year, said he'd made a terrible mistake, said he wanted to try again. I looked at him like he was a stranger, because that's what he is now. A man I used to know who destroyed his own life and wanted me to clean up the mess. I said no, closed the door, haven't spoken to him since, except through lawyers about the kids. The kids are good. Ethan's applying to colleges. Sophie's thriving in high school. They still see their father occasionally, but the relationship is transactional, distant, nothing like it used to be. He killed that himself. Some things don't come back. I don't hate Warren anymore. Hate requires energy I don't waste on him. I don't feel sorry for him either. He made his choices, every step, every lie, every time he chose temporary pleasure over permanent loyalty. The consequences are his to carry. What I learned is this. When someone shows you who they are by their actions, believe them the first time. Don't wait for the second betrayal. Don't make yourself smaller to keep someone who's already decided to leave. Don't stay in a burning house hoping the fire will change its mind. And when you finally walk away, don't look back. Don't check on them. Don't wonder if they're okay. They made their choices. You made yours. Let them live with what they built while you build something better. The hand that hurt me thought it was strong. Turns out it was just reckless. And reckless hands always end up holding nothing but regret. I'm holding a life I chose, a peace I fought for, and a future that belongs completely to me. That's not revenge. That's justice. And sometimes justice is the only closure you need.